The title of my presentation, as you can see here, is using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and specifically for anomaly detection to decrease risk and improve data quality and patient safety as well. So today in my presentation, I'm planning to cover our view of what we mean by anomaly detection and the value it can deliver. We will cover and discuss the role of AI and ML. We'll explain you the approach at ThoughtSphere and how we prepare the data, how we ingest the data, and then kind of massage and standardize the data which is used for the anomaly detection. And then we'll show you, I'll go and show you certain examples from our application, and then finally I'll end the presentation by describing our platform in a little bit details as well. Of course, we'll be happy to take questions, as Eric mentioned towards the end. Eric has already done the introduction, so I'm going to skip over slide 2. Thanks, Eric, for nice introduction. So I'm going to quickly move on to the next slide over here. So when we think about anomaly detection, you can see here 3 key themes: data quality, patient safety, and study performance. So picking up each of the items individually and talking about it. I mean, you all are aware quality and accuracy of data captured is pretty important in a clinical trial, as data is key to answer the scientific questions defined, which the study protocol sets out for. Any inaccurate data captured in the source systems, specifically critical variables for a study, may lead to undesired results of the study as well. So there are a lot of data anomalies we see which can originate in the data itself, such as we have repeated values, duplicate values, in the data, missing data. There may be sites fabricating data. There could be fraudulent data entered by sites. So these are like key to be detected upfront and actioned upon as well, right? Taking up patient safety. Patient safety is of the utmost importance in any study. Anything that can adversely impact the safety of a subject that should be flagged as soon as possible. Identifying sites that are relatively underreporting or reporting too many adverse events or rather serious adverse events as well. They should be picked up and reviewed to avoid any patient safety issues as well. Anomalies in critical parameters captured by site or reported by subject through patient-reported outcomes, or in today's days with kind of stream through devices. The data which is coming in can provide insights to the study medical monitors to kind of look at potential patient safety issues that may arise and take action as well. Right? So timely actions by these medical reps or central medical monitors can help like save patient lives as well if once the action is taken, timely action is taken on any anomalies as well. Right? We talked about patient safety and quality of data. They are critical, but then also the study leads are also concerned regarding the performance of the study. So operational metrics, for recruitment issues, protocol deviation, financials, etc. They can, the leads are constantly monitoring those on the studies, and anomalies in these metrics, whether one site is doing, relatively slower in recruitment, for example, than other site, can quickly be identified, and appropriate action plans can be devised by the central, the study teams as well. So, anomaly detection allows sponsors to identify outliers in data, using mathematical models, correlate influencing factors, and deliver insights on data quality, patient safety, and study performance. And of course, today's the advances we are seeing in artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can identify these anomalies faster than ever before as well. So roles and methods of AI and ML in anomaly detection. Now, given that AI and ML have made anomaly detection cheaper, easier, and faster, I'm going to focus on this slide. What the role and the methods of AI and ML, which we see and which we use as well, right? So when we talk about machine learning, there are two key methods. To incorporate machine learning, which is supervised learning and unsupervised learning here. So a lot of practical examples, and we see is using the supervised learning as well, which is being deployed to find out anomalies, etc. as well, right? So what is the supervised learning? I mean, so supervised learning is where you have data sets available, right? So you have a historical database, data sets which have been collected, and then on top of it, you have categorized those data sets or identified what are the anomalies in those data sets as well. So that's where you kind of train the machine using existing data sets and categorized it, right? So we call it like input variables X. If you kind of label it as input variables X, then and then you have categorized it. Then any incoming data you can predict whether it's an anomaly or not an anomaly using a function which is a machine learning method, which is a function of which is the data set which we have provided to train the system as well, right? So the goal is to approximate the mapping function so well that when you have a new input data, you can predict the output variables for that data using the trained data sets as well. As I mentioned, it's called it's a supervised learning because the process of an algorithm learning from training data set. So it can be thought of we are teaching or teachers supervising the learning process. So we know the correct answers. The algorithms iteratively make predictions on the training data and is corrected by there are various methods available in the machine learning to optimize the models as well. So they're corrected using those methods as well, which are available as well, right? So, to example, like using probabilistic models trained on prior categorized data is an example of using a supervised learning model. The statistics used in these models can be derived. I mean, just an example, like a Bayesian probabilistic models learn from the past data, right? So the subject, you have a lot of subject clinical data available, such as lab values, vitals, statistics, medical history. Those are like the key. Those multivariate data set can be actually initial inputs to the training the model, and then those incoming, any incoming data would be evaluated against this model to detect anomalies, etc. as well. So I gave you one example of a probabilistic model, but then there are more advanced models as well, such as neural networks, which are CNNs, RNNs, deep encoders, etc., which can be leveraged for more complex use cases as well. But again, the data is the key to train any machine learning model, etc. as well, right? So that's more about supervised learning. Coming into unsupervised learning, now this is where the data is not categorized, or you've not found anomalies in this. So we leave the system to learn looking at the data. So there is no correct answer to, you need to kind of, take the data, apply the algorithms, find outliers, and keep training the system, keep training the models as well to get the optimum result over there as well. So there are a few examples like, clustering and association algorithms. Clustering being you look at the data, you plot out the data and see, based on multiple variables, how they, are kind of coming together, and any outliers can be identified as, anomalies, etc. as well, right? So clustering association algorithms, they are kind of examples of unsupervised learning where the anomalous data can be identified. Some of the key examples could be like, k-means clustering. There are certain algorithms for association rules, principal component analysis, etc. And there are advanced neural networks also, which can be used for, unsupervised learning as well here. Okay, so going into preparing the data, right? So I think so for any machine learning algorithms to work well, the key is the data, right? So we need to gather and prepare, identify, gather, and prepare relevant data, which can be fed into these models as well. I mean, so any machine learning models or statistical models, the data is the critical path over there. And you may need like large amount of data that may need to be acquired. Now there is a lot of variability in the data as well, because there could be various vendors, or even if the data is being captured within the same system, it could be different by studies and things like that. So it needs to be standardized and aggregated and prepped to be able to kind of feed into these models as well to enable anomaly detection as well, right? So as I mentioned, the data originates from various sources, right? Each data set may be maybe of a different structure, right? Or for example, the data structure for each study configured within the EDC system could vary based on your design of the study, or what is the scientific goals of the study. You may have a different definition of the data, how it has been defined in the EDC systems, etc. as well. So there's a lot of variability, and due to this high variability in the data model for the source system, the traditional way of leveraging and putting the data into relational databases, which is data warehouse, that it brings in its inherent challenges, and that is because these relational databases kind of depend on static models, data structures to be defined upfront before the data can be loaded as well, right? So the struggle is the schema of these data sets needs to be defined upfront before the data can be ingested, and if any deviation or changes happens to these data sets, which is pretty common in our scenario, because a lot of study amendments can happen, or data could be, central lab data could be coming from different vendors as well, which are supporting, different structure, which they can change as well. So it kind of leads to a lot of additional effort and cost to adjust the, data models and bring in and ingest the new data as well. So what we have, done is we took a different architectural approach to take this data and ingest this data because of the inherent challenges with the data warehouse. We are using a data lake architecture wherein schema for this incoming source data is not required to be defined upfront. So you don't have to go and define structures for this data. Your source data, which has to be ingested upfront, it kind of defines itself once the data is in as well, right? So what it helps is it helps the platform to take the data from any source and dynamically adjust the data structures, in scenarios of such as protocol amendment where the data is changing as well, right? So the data lake design, which we're kind of leveraging, is using a document-oriented NoSQL database, which assembles the data from both the unstructured and the structured databases. And the key thing is source data, which comes in ingested, is not required to be transformed based on predefined model, as I mentioned. So it is saved in NoSQL database as is in the ThoughtSphere data lake. So the approach which we are taking is there's an extract, load, and transform ELT architectural approach, rather than the traditional ELT, which has been a standard for a very long time, which kind of is the extract, transform, transform and load. So we use ELT, which is extract, load, and transform, whereas the traditional approach being extract, transform, and load. So it kind of has multiple steps before the data is ready to be visualized and kind of fed into any kind of model to be evaluated as well. Now, the way we actually store the data as well, the platform has capability to version the data as it's changing. So you can go at any time and see what was the patient data or any operational data at a given point of time. Because of the structures we're using, it's very easy any time the data, the data element for a subject changes, we kind of version it so that the whole traceability is available for the user as well. Okay. Okay. So this slide provides a little bit of a high-level architectural perspective on all the the cloud components provided in a ThoughtSphere architecture. So there are multiple component layers, and that we're the platform is componentized each of the layers so that it can manage large data sets as well. So the top layer, which you see here, is the configuration layer that allows the users to define the incoming data types and the sources of the data using configuration views within the system. So there is no programming required. It's all configuration based. You can just go into the system and provide quick configuration on providing the data types and where the data is coming from as well. So so out of the box, so that the platform is capable of working on various data types such as clinical data, which is originating from EDC systems, ePro, central lab, ECGs, etc. Along with the operational data from sources, such as CTMS, CTMF, etc. as well. So all the data, clinical as well as the operational data, can be ingested and combined within the data lake as well, right? So apart from the output of the data domains, the customer can also configure domains to ingest and map custom data types as well, right? So as I mentioned, there are out-of-the-box domains such as clinical and operational to load data, but then there could be a scenario where you may want to load a data which is out-of-the-box data pipeline is not available. You can just go ahead and use configuration to ingest that data as well. So some examples could be like FDA, ERS data, or you can also bring in real-world data in an OMOP format, etc. as well, right? So all this configuration needs very minimal inputs, and it just needs like what are the key identifiers, etc. as well, and the system is capable of collating the data into the data lake just by the minimal configuration information which has been provided as well. So once we have the types of data sets which we are going to bring in and the system will be supporting, the actual definition of incoming data sets are provided in the system. Again, it's configuration. You provide whether it's an ODM data or a flat file or a SAS data set. Here again, the configuration effort is very minimal. As most of the data domains have predefined configurations available right out of the box. System is also capable of connecting dynamically to the vendor APIs and pull the data right from the APIs or also from secure locations such as SFTP, etc. as well, right? And the final box which you see in the configuration section is setting up of target mapping types, which allows customers to define the target data model to which the incoming data can be arranged in using the clinical and the operational mapping workbenches available in the platform as well, right? So mapping types, when I talk about it, could be converted into STTM or E2B format, etc. as well, which are available out of the box as well. Finally, on the system is enabled, as I mentioned, and there are data pipelines which it can enable, consume both clinical and non-clinical data, which is the operational data sets, which can be ingested into the database as well. Now, after the data has been ingested in the data lake, there are a lot of post-processing nodes which you see at the bottom, right? So these post-processing nodes run things like your data standardization, your aggregations, and then a lot of anomaly detection algorithms are applied to incoming data in this layer as well, right? So and all the data which is standardized for the studies, they can be further prepped and provided as an input to training various machine learning models for anomaly detection, etc. For example, standardized, you can have standardized multivariate lab data across study that can be used to train supervised or unsupervised machine learning algorithms that can identify anomalies. in the current study as the subject data starts flowing in as well. Okay. So I think so now we have some slides. We are showing how you can configure the anomaly detection in the system. So you can on this slide we are showing like the range for the system to detect outliers for the specific key indicators, right? So this is once you kind of start setting up the system, you can start providing system some inputs that what are my outlier thresholds, etc. as well. But then system over time learns, and for the subsequent studies, it can auto generate these thresholds, etc. as well. So so these thresholds are defined for the important KRIs, and they can enable study teams to proactively identify sites which has data anomalies and take remediation actions as well. So system provides like statistical measures such as standard deviation or doing a relative comparisons for defining these thresholds. And once system has learned, then it automatically can go into more granular definition of thresholds, which could be very relative as well. So what you see here is some of the key performance indicators where you can define your thresholds for anomaly detection as well, right? So, okay. So once we have defined these thresholds, so I mean, what we saw was just the definition. Once the anomalies are detected, they have to be visualized for and provided as an input to the end users. So what we define the threshold values in the KRI is they manifest into the study level. What you see is the traffic light indicators, right? So any site which has KRI metric outside the threshold are turned into red, which is for the metric indicating that there may be some issues with this site as well. Amber color is anything between, it's kind of an early warning for the study teams to take proactive measures on the site, because you're not just hit the higher threshold, but you're between the lower threshold and the higher threshold. So, maybe study team can go proactively, take some action there as well, right? So what you're seeing is system provides it at the site level, at the at each of the KRIs. What you can also do is once you drill down into any of the KRIs, I mean, you may click into one of the red indicators or one of the sites. So now what you can see is the details for the site, and then you can see why the site is outlier at the study level as well, right? So as you see here, there are various standard deviations built out in the graph, and users can visualize whether the site is a red, amber, green, and then maybe devise an action how they need to kind of remediate the issues at the site as well. Okay. So there are various, visual. This is kind of a sample, from live samples from some of our customers, which has been, de-identified, but they can easily identify, what sites are outside the range and where to take action as well, looking at these kind of graphs as well. Okay. So finally, getting into, a little bit more details on the components in ThoughtSphere Cloud. Again, right, what you see in the center is what we have been talking about, which is the data collation and the aggregation platform. So there are multiple platforms in the overall suite for ThoughtSphere Cloud. Now, data collation and aggregation is where the whole action starts, which is where the data is getting aggregated from clinical and operational sources, and this is where any anomalies are detected. We kind of talked about user-defined models and transformation of data into those models such as SCTM and E2B, which can be done into this layer. And there is a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning built into this layer for anomaly detection, as well as some of the other things such as identifying risks at the site or identifying smart mapping, etc. as well, right? So. Okay, so we kind of talked about we are using a data lake architecture now, even for machine learning, right from the first study itself. I mean, as I mentioned, there's a lot of data which needs to be collated for the machine learning to work well. But then there are certain scenarios what we call as an eager learning right off the bat, where once the study is onboarded, system starts using some of the statistical algorithms. Like for example, for smart mapping, it uses like Jaro-Winkler statistical models, distance models to identify what could be the smart mapping, etc. as well. Now, finally, I'll just touch on one of the boxes on the left. I think the rest of the two boxes are not of the interest for today's presentation. But analytics and RBM, which is where any kind of anomalies are kind of surfaced out through visualizations and the BI platform, and then we have the whole risk-based, comprehensive risk-based platform, which is available in the platform as well to track issues with the site, etc. as well.